Welcome to the Image of Moving Color, where we'll be going through the evolution of color throughout film's history, starting with film before color. As the child of photography, filmmakers used existing techniques from photography to enhance their films and add color to the otherwise monochromatic world of early image capturing. The most time-consuming of these was hand tinting, which is exactly what it sounds like. The artist physically colored every single frame by hand using tiny brushes and acid dye. Most of the first hand-tinted films were of dancers, the colors morphing and flowing with the dynamic movements of their dresses. One of the most well-known uses of hand-tinting is Annabelle's Serpentine Dance, directed by William Heiss and William Kennedy Dickinson. Hand-tinting was evidently extremely time-consuming, so most filmmakers opted for tinting and toning, another technique borrowed from photography. Tinting involved taking film positives and soaking them in dye and acid baths, scene by scene, creating a bright, even wash of color. The tints were used to signify an array of elements from environment to emotion, one example being 1922's Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau, which used yellow for daylight, blue for nighttime, amber for interior light, and pink for dawn. Alternatively, toning altered the silver film to create high contrasts and deep shadows using different colored chemicals like iron or sulfides. Silver sulfide toning is used to make sepia, a color synonymous with antique photos that's used for film color grading to this day. Tinting and toning were used together, since tinting brightened the image but left shadows obscured, which toning could help rectify. However, technology inevitably advanced, and the kinemacolor was born. Invented by George Albert Smith in 1908, the kinemacolor was two altering color filters that were attached in front of the shutter and projector, while the physical film stayed black and white. Even though there was visible separation from the color filters, the effect was met with success and intrigue from the public. Their marketing motto after that was, "They're not pictures, but realities." But it wouldn't last long, because the kinemacolor was what eventually heralded in the era of Technicolor.
Technical history of Technicolor. Technicolor was founded by Herbert T. Kalmus, Daniel F. Comstock, and W. Burton Westcott. First process was used between 1916 and 1920. In Process 1, beam splitter was created to display the green and red images, which overlap with each other seamlessly from the same point of view, but it failed to achieve this in practical tests. Second process was created to fix the alignment issue. Addition technique was quickly switched to subtractive technique. Beam splitter prism became essential and was used in all Technicolor cameras. Technicolor Process 2 was used between 1922 and 1927. The first subtracting technique used in film. Black and white images are recorded on negative strip. Similar to the previous process, this one also encountered practical difficulties. The film was prone to scratching, curling, and shrinking due to the heat generated from the film projectors. Despite these difficulties, it was considered commercial success. It was used in limited amount of scenes. Very few films were shot using fully Technicolor, and most of them were very short. It was also incapable of achieving some of the expectations. Movies using Technicolor Process 2. The Tall of the City, 1922, is the first movie to use two-tone Technicolor Phase 2. Technicolor Process 3 was used between 1927 and 1932. Subtracting, beam splitter prism, and dye transfer were used. Used the same camera as Process 2. Combination of red and green recordings on black and white negative strips. In contrast to the former process, however, the two images were printed on one side of the positive by the dye transfer or imbibition process. Third process was far more successful and sophisticated compared to the previous, but it still lacked the full color spectrum as it only contained two tones, green-blue and red-orange. Technicolor Process 4 was used between 1932 and 1953. It is the first one to use 3 color filters on camera. There are now 3 black and white film strips instead of 2. Before the dye transfer process, the films were exposed to the weak key image in black and white of the green record or blue or red to increase the sharpness and visual quality of the images. Each of the black and white film strips were individually exposed to the assigned colors. The colors which were applied complement the colors of recordings, magenta for green, yellow for blue, and cyan for the red. With the addition of blue cyan filter, full color spectrum was achievable. Herbert Kalmus, Technicolor co-founder, experimented with the application of this invention in animation and reached out to Disney. Due to previous experiences with damaged films and rush production, Technicolor became more focused on quality. Technicolor came out with a color advisory service for film productions. They help with the color score for costuming, makeup, set design, and overall look of the final product to achieve the best possible outcome. Not only color advisory services was available, but cameramen were also specifically trained to use the new cameras. Movies using Technicolor Process 4. Flowers and Trees, 1932, is an animated short film made by Disney, was first made to be in black and white, but the financial backing Calmus reached out to Disney to make this in full color, won an Oscar and Disney credited Technicolor. La Cucaracha, 1934, is a prototype film, used as a technical demonstration and experiment in color aesthetic. The Wizard of Oz, 1939, is the iconic film that is the most memorable example of the use of Technicolor to this day.
The use of Technicolor and its importance. Technicolor was important because it highlighted the advancements made in technology for film, color, and camera work. The first example of this that I have is A Trip to the Moon versus Buffalo Bill's Last Fight. A Trip to the Moon was hand-painted after production for this colored look, whereas Buffalo Bill's Last Fight used Technicolor. The saturation and contrast is obvious and clear and shows the advancements of technology in such a short amount of time. The use of Technicolor in movies is easily recognizable from the vibrant colors and saturated palettes and finish. Cinematographers were quick to point out that color offered greater expressive opportunities than black and white and a greater flexibility to render emotion and mood. Here is Casablanca and All That Heaven Allows to properly show the advances in tech. All That Heaven Allows uses a unique form of lighting to really highlight Technicolor and the ways that it can be used. Another example from All That Heaven Allows shows how color elevates mood and gets impact across. Here's some other examples of Technicolor in American media that really showcase the vibrant colors and stark contrast that was achieved with Technicolor. The most well-known form of Technicolor was Process 3. Because it was so specific to handle, special cameramen were often trained for the job. And that brings us to the invention of the 3-strip camera in 1932. This camera represents the advancements in technology that were made in camera work as well, because it was built on an entirely new design, even though it used old ones and models. This camera captured vibrant, crisp colors that were, according to the Eastman Museum, recombined in painting in post. If we recall the lecture discussions and Marshall McLuhan's concept of looking through the rearview mirror, this camera being built on the backs of those that came before it is indicative of the advancements in technology and the want to grow. Technicolor didn't just help live action, though. It was used in animation. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from Disney was the first feature-length film to use animation, or Technicolor, which really showed its adaptability to work across mediums. It helped animators get a watercolor finish that gave more emotion and uniqueness to a film. Technicolor heralded a new age for color and camera, but it had its cons. It was expensive and difficult to manage. Competitors in the market emerged, and the dye transfer was eventually too challenging, so they had to phase it out for less expensive options. The technology was then slowly lost. Technicolor tech doesn't exist these days, and would need a lot of money and time to be brought back into the public. This makes Technicolor films special because they stand as a relic of their time and of human ingenuity. Technicolor did last pretty long, though, at least here in America. Some of the last movies to be made with it were from the 1970s, not counting European films. Color correcting in the 21st century then starts falling under grading and correcting, with no longer having Technicolor. And a good example of this, which brings in our next topic being the digital, is the use of Technicolor from The Wizard of Oz and digital color grading in Wicked.
The decline and short-lived rise of Technicolor. By 1950, Kodak's Eastman color process had taken a momentous amount of Technicolor's business, phasing 3-strip process at a film standard by the end of the decade. Kodak's new film technology met the demand of studios wanting to film in widescreen formats and did not require exclusive laboratories to process film, only requiring a single strip of multi-layered film to operate. This innovation saw filmmakers move to Kodak's technology, who saw the appeal in smaller, more affordable cameras. As mentioned by Winston Hawk and Technicolor Cinematography, Technicolor developed their own rival single-strip dye transfer film, known internally as Monopack or Technicolor No. 5. Monopack, made in collaboration with Eastman Kodak Company, could be used in any camera while still displaying Technicolor's iconic color and visual flair, while the company retired the original 3-strip cameras and converted them into high-quality photography cameras. This innovation would allow Technicolor color and tone to live through the mid-1950s to the late 70s. By the end of the decade, Suspiria was released, marking the end of Technicolor's dye transfer in late 20th century filmmaking. By the start of the 1980s, CCD electronic sensors, as discussed in week 3's lecture, had begun to slowly creep into Hollywood in the form of digital cameras. While dye transfer films showed better color, clarity, and reformatting ability, digital cameras became king due to cost-effective and enhanced editing abilities emerging from advancements in computer hardware, such as color grading. However, early digital films still needed to be transferred onto film reels for use in theaters, which still used traditional film projectors. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Technicolor would focus on their laboratories, which they used to process and remaster Technicolor-made films to be released on home media platforms like VHS and eventually the compact disc. As the end of the century approached, Technicolor would design a modern dye transfer film stock under the name Technicolor Mark VI. This reinvention of the traditional method saw use in movies like Toy Story 2 and Batman and Robin, while also serving as a new method for remastering movies made on the older versions of Technicolor. However, Technicolor was later acquired by Thomson Multimedia in 2000, and the process was discontinued in 2001, having only been in service for 4 years. After its acquisition, the Technicolor Group would turn into an archival and processing company, offering color grading and imaging services as well as maintaining and archiving its library of movies. Technicolor became all but obsolete. Its iconic visual aesthetic would live on through the use of lookup tables, image coloring, and digital editing, such as the film Wicked, whose color grading mirrors the 1939 classic it was based on.
Hi, this is Modern Day Color and Film. So currently we use a process known as color grading. Color grading is generally post-production, where colors are altered and overlaid after filming has taken place. It's generally online. People have done it with film strips, though, kind of replicating Technicolor, but not necessarily like like it was originally done. A great example of color grading, I would say, is Twilight. Just came to my mind first thing, just because it has this classic blue filter. Anytime I think of color grading, I think of Twilight because of the blue filter that was applied to make folks feel more dramatic, more moody, more gloomy, a little more mysterious, right? And they chose this cold blue, obviously, because the vampires are quite cold. There is a lot of symbolism in color and in lighting. It's pretty surface level, but there have been people who have altered the scenes to show what it would look like without the color grading, and you can really see the difference in the emotion in the scene. Color grading is so integral to conveying emotion. I think it really, really helps push forward like the director's vision for it. I will say one of the biggest follies in modern day cinema is the art of color grading and how a lot of people misuse it. I will say this is in no way unrelated to this current era of minimalism, sad beige, recession, clean girl, conservatism, everything that's kind of coming back. It's related, obviously. Yeah, I will say an example of this that comes to mind is Wicked. We talked about The Wizard of Oz back with original Technicolor, because it was one of the first examples of this film technique being used. But yeah, Wicked is the kind of pinnacle of modern technology. They had a huge budget, like massive astronomical budget, but in theaters it was really underwhelming because of the colors or lack of colors, right? You look at The Wizard of Oz and it's so big, so beautiful, so colorful, and obviously I understand that like the colors are different because the film strips were dyed rather than color applied post-production. It's very sad, it's gray, it's not as vibrant as the world should be, and not as vibrant as we've seen the world can be, right? Like, again, in The Wizard of Oz. I would say that's one of the biggest flops in modern day cinema is just the misuse of color grading, but if it's done well, like, again, Twilight, for example, color grading is great, it's beautiful, it can do incredible things for a story and really project the narrative that you want to tell. Thank you.